What the Falcons do? Rise up. Welcome to Rise Up Reactions, the show where we talk all things Falcons, NFL, Georgia sports, and in general the sports news of the day. I'm your host, Dr. Lee Denning, lifelong sports fan. So today I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Atlanta Falcons running game for the 2022 season. In order to do that effectively, I do have to very briefly recap the 2021 season. If you want my in-depth dive on the Falcons offense, I have already done that for the 2021 season, the numbers, how bad we were in a lot of things. But just to recap that, we were 29th overall last year in rushing attempts with 393. We were, I believe, 31st. Yeah, 31st in overall yards rushing, 1,451. To put that in perspective, the best team, the Philadelphia Eagles, had 2,715 yards, so they almost doubled our yards per game. We had only 11 touchdowns. Compare that to the Philadelphia Eagles. They had 25 touchdowns. And just in general, we were not particularly good. And in terms of fumbles, we also were pretty high. We had 24 total. Not a great year rushing. We had a lot of problems with the offensive line. I do think that's going to be a little bit better this year as some of these guys get more experience under their belts. Chris Lindstrom is going to be amazing for us going forward. We do have some problems at right tackle and left guard. I think left guard could be improved this coming season, but we'll see what happens. Overall, I think we're going to be running the ball much better, and I think we're going to have to if we want to have any chance at all this season. We only won 7 games last year. That was with Matt Ryan at the helm. Matt Ryan is no longer on the team. I'm not convinced that Marcus Mariota is anything like him or even close to the same type of player, the same level of production that Matt Ryan can give us. But I wish Matt Ryan well at Indianapolis, and I really hope that in the next few years he finds a way to win a Super Bowl for that team. He definitely deserves one. But just talking about the future of our rushing game, we got 5 running backs on the roster as of right now. We added one of them within the last 3 hours of making this video. But the guys I want to talk about, number 1 on our depth chart, Cordarrelle Patterson. He is 31 years old. He's going to be 32 by the end of the 2022 season. He has a PFF grade of last year of 82.2, so not too bad overall. He had a little bit of a renaissance last year, but again, he's a little older. He had 153 carries last year, 618 yards, 6 touchdowns. Most of that was in the early part of the season when we didn't really know what we had in him. As you got through the middle of the season, those numbers didn't really pile up anymore. He was forced back into a wide receiver role primarily. Had 52 receptions, 548 yards, and 5 touchdowns doing that. So, again, 4.0 yards per carry as a rusher. Not bad, but again, he had a lot more explosiveness in the first part of the season. He was closer to 5 yards per carry in the first 7 games of last season. And then he ended up averaging 4.0 by the end. So, you've got to do a lot of below 4 yard per carries to get to that point. Still a guy that I think should move back to wide receiver primarily for his age. I think it's going to be better for his long-term career, but who knows? He's still probably one of the better guys in the backfield for the Falcons, which is kind of scary. I just don't really feel great about him being there. But moving on, the next guy on the depth chart, he's a little older than I thought he was, but Damien Williams, I thought he was only about 28 years old. Turns out he's actually 30. He's going to be 31 by the end of the 2022 season. Another guy who's been primarily a backup his entire career. He played at Kansas City, which a lot of us know him from a fantasy perspective. Did really, really well when some of the lead backs there have gone down with injury. He sat out the 2020 season for COVID, and then I didn't even realize this. He played for the Bears last season. I thought he was still with Kansas City. But over the last year, he did okay in a backup role to David Montgomery. He had 40 carries, 164 yards, 2 touchdowns, averaged 4.1 yards per carry. Not bad. He also played a little bit in the receiving game, 16 catches for 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Pretty decent threat out of the backfield. A little bit older, does have a little less wear and tear on him than, say, Cordarrelle Patterson or some of these other guys who have been a little bit more of a lead role at different points in time. So we'll see. We might be able to get some good use out of him, or this could be the final year of his career in Atlanta. And we'll see what happens with him. The next guy I'm really excited about is Tyler Algiere. 5th round pick out of Brigham Young for the Falcons. In his senior year, he had 276 carries, 1,601 yards, 23 touchdowns, and averaged 5.8 yards per carry. Over 4 years, he averaged 6.4 yards per carry. He was just given a lot more volume in his senior year, and he still didn't step off at all. In addition, his senior year, he played a significant role in the passing game, catching 28 balls out of the backfield for 199 yards. Did not get any touchdowns that way, but they used him primarily on the goal line, so he made up for all the touchdowns he didn't quite make in with the rushing touchdowns. In his senior year, he got a PFF grade of 93.1, which instantly makes him better than anybody on the NFL team that we have. I do think he's going to start the season as the running back 3 competing for running back 2. I think he would be a nice third down back for us to have. And, who knows what's going to happen with him. I do think he's going to ultimately end up being the starter by the end of the season. But I think it's going to take a while for him to get there. Or it may take an injury to Cordarrelle or Damien, which I really hope doesn't happen either. We don't need injuries with this motley crew of running backs. The next guy that we just got, 26 years old. He's going to be, he's going to be 27 basically by the start of the NFL season, is Jeremy McNichols. So as of 3 hours ago, we signed the former Tennessee backup, primarily a receiving threat out of the backfield, but he did have to step into a larger role last year when Derrick Henry went down. Didn't really light up the scoreboard or light up the stat lines at all, but he had 41 attempts, 156 yards. Again, not great. 3.8 yards per carry. PFF gave him a 60.4 grade overall. So, again, just average. Nothing special about him in that regard. But in his receiving game, he was a little bit better. 28 receptions on 34 attempts, or rather 34 targets, 240 yards and a touchdown. So really a lot better as a receiving threat. So that may be something that we can definitely utilize. And we did sign him after the draft, after the normal big-time free agency moves are made. I do look for him to make the roster, which is unfortunate because most NFL teams only carry about 4 running backs going into the NFL season, which doesn't leave a lot of room for a guy that's been on the back burners of the Falcons for a while now in Quadri Allison. Allison last year had to step in a few times. He never got a chance to be the lead back and has not gotten a chance to be the lead back his entire career. He keeps getting beat out in practice by other guys, so I think that says a lot about him. But he did have 21 carries, 105 yards, and 1 touchdown last year. It's far too small of a sample size for us to make anything out of it. He did have 5 yards per carry. He's only 25 years old. He's going to be 26 at the start of the season. But again, PFF gave him a grade of 56.6. If anybody's not going to make the roster, unfortunately, I think Quadri is going to be the guy that gets put on the practice squad. So again, it just depends on what happens. Cordarrelle, I would love to see him move to our wide receiver 2 role. Let guys like Olamide and Brian Edwards compete for the wide receiver 3 spot. Have Drake London in there at wide receiver 1 with Kyle Pitts as the tight end and periodic slot receiver. We got a few other guys in there like Geronimo Allison who could also play a big role for us. So we'll see what happens overall in the offense this year. It's a pretty motley crew that we've put together. As far as running backs go, right now, Cordarrelle Patterson is probably our starting running back. I wish he was a receiver. If he's not, he's the starter. Damien Williams will probably be the RB2/change of pace back. And again, if he does well, he could end up being the starter. But I do look for Tyler Algiere. I look for youth to be on his side and to eventually win out the starting role by the end of the season. Fantasy purposes, I don't think he's going to be super valuable this year, but he could have a couple of surprising games late in the year. And you got Jeremy McNichols, probably going to be our running back 4 if everything stays as it is. And again, we can only have so many guys on the team. I don't think Quadri is going to make the final roster this year after having made it the last 2 seasons. We'll see what happens. He would instantly come back as the running back 4 if anybody went down with an injury. But, that's just kind of how I think the season is going to shake out at running back. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Please consider liking this video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe. It'll really help the channel grow. And until next time, rise up.